Welcome to Lost Love Mystery, where every story unravels a secret. So, let's dive into another story. The leather saws of my Italian Oxfords clicked rhythmically against the polished hardwood floors as I strode through the foyer of my Upper East Side brownstone. It had been another grueling day at the office, but tonight was special, our 10th wedding anniversary. Sarah and I had made reservations at Purse, our favorite restaurant in the city, a place reserved for only the most momentous of occasions. As I hung my overcoat in the coat closet, I noticed an unfamiliar pair of men's dress shoes haphazardly kicked off by the door. An uneasy knot formed in the pit of my stomach. Sarah never left shoes lying around. She was meticulous about keeping our home spotless. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice echoing through the deathly quiet house. No response. I ascended the curved staircase, my heart thundering like a hammer against an anvil with each step. At the top landing, a litany of discarded clothing came into view. A man's suit jacket, a silky blouse, a lace bra, the knot in my gut twisted tighter as the unmistakable realization of what was happening slapped me square across the face. My palms grew clammy as I inched toward our bedroom door, rivulets of sweat trickling down my spine. I could hear the rhythmic creaking of bed springs from the other side, punctuated by muffled gasps and moans that will be forever seared into my memory. I didn't want to open that door to have the devastating truth confirmed before my eyes. But I had to know, had to see it with my own eyes. Sucking in a deep breath, I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The sight that greeted me was like a dagger to the heart. There was Sarah, my beautiful wife, the woman I had pledged my eternal love and fidelity to, naked and writhing atop an equally nude man whose face I instantly recognized. Alex Mercer, a hotshot executive at a major investment firm and someone I had considered a close friend. Sarah's eyes met mine, her expression morphing from ecstasy to sheer horror in the span of a heartbeat. "Michael," she gasped, scrambling to cover herself with the bedsheet as Alex swore a torrent of profanities. I stood there, rooted to the spot as a torrent of emotions, rage, betrayal, disbelief, washed over me in crashing waves. This wasn't happening, not to me, not to us. Our marriage was supposed to be sacred, the bedrock upon which we had built our lives. Together. Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but I silenced her with a look that could cut glass. "Don't I snarl through clenched teeth? Don't you dare say a damn word." Running on my heel, I stormed out of the bedroom, down the stairs and out the front door, not even bothering to grab my coat. The crisp marcher felt like a slap across the face as I stumbled blindly down the street, struggling to process the devastating blow I had just been dealt. My life, my world, the carefully constructed reality I had worked so hard to build. It had all come crashing down around me in the span of a few earth-shattering moments. The betrayal cut me deeper than any blade, the agonizing pain of it taking my breath away. As I aimlessly wandered the darkened streets, my mind whirled, unable to make sense of the nightmare I had just witnessed. How could she do this to me? To us? After all we had been through together, all the dreams we had dreamed, the future we had meticulously planned. How could Sarah throw it all away on a tow-dry affair, blinded by rage, grief, and 1,000 other emotions? I realized in that moment that I could never forgive her for this unforgivable sin. Our marriage, the sacred vows we had spoken before God and all our loved ones, was over. And there would be a reckoning. I stormed into my office the next morning, still reeling from the previous night's events. Lisa, my closest friend and colleague, looked up from her desk with a concerned expression. "Michael, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I slumped into the chair across from her, burying my face in my hands. "It's Sarah," I muttered through gritted teeth. I caught her with another man in our bed. Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? No, that can't be right. Sarah loves you, Michael. Are you sure about this?" "I saw it with my own eyes, Lisa." I exploded, slamming my fist on the desk. "She was naked, tangled up with that scumbag, Alex Mercer." Lisa shook her head slowly. "I'm so sorry, Michael. That's unforgivable. We sat in heavy silence for several moments before I finally spoke again. I want to destroy them, Lisa. Both of them. I want to make them pay for what they've done to us. A slow, sinister smile crept across Lisa's lips. Well, you've come to the right place, my friend. For lawyers, ruining lives is what we do best. Over the next few weeks, Lisa and I devised an intricate plan to dismantle Sarah and Alex's sort of affair from the inside out. First, I would approach Sarah and convince her to attend marriage counseling under the pretense of wanting to work through our issues. Little would she know that Lisa would be posing as a court witness, meticulously documenting every shred of evidence that Sarah was continuing her tryst with Alex. Are you sure you can go through with this, Michael? Lisa asked one evening as we pored over the revised terms of my prenuptial agreement, pretending to want to save your marriage when your true intention is the opposite. I met her gaze, my jaw set in grim determination. I'm sure. Sarah made her choice when she betrayed me. Now it's time for her to face the consequences. Lisa nodded solemnly. Well, I've modified the prenup to be incredibly straightforward. If you pursue divorce proceedings, she gets nothing, no assets, no alimony, nada. She'll be left with the clothes on her back. A cruel smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Good. She deserves that and more for what she's done. When I finally broached the subject of counseling with Sarah a few days later, she was equal parts relieved and remorseful. Oh, Michael, I'm so grateful you're willing to work on our marriage. She gushed through streams of apologetic tears. I swear, what happened with Alex was a terrible mistake. It will never happen again. I fought back the urge to sneer at her pathetic display. Well, we have a long road ahead of us, I replied, feigning empathy. But if we're both truly committed, I believe we can move past this. Sarah flung her arms around me, her torrent of tears staining my shirt. Thank you, thank you. You won't regret this, I promise. But I already regretted it. I regretted every moment of the last decade I had wasted on this unfaithful snake of a woman. As I held her in that hollow embrace, my mind was already looking ahead to the final act, her ultimate downfall. Week after week, Sarah and I attended the counseling sessions, playing out the weary charade of a struggling couple, desperately trying to pick up the pieces of a shattered marriage. All the while, Lisa hung back in the shadows, camcorder in hand, documenting every damning shred of evidence that Sarah's dalliance with Alex continued unabated despite her supposed desire to reconcile. Finally, when we had accumulated an overwhelming body of proof, the curtain fell. I called Sarah into my office, the same office where we had meticulously planned her undoing, and laid it all on the table. Did you really think you could fool me, Sarah? I asked, unable to keep the disdain from my voice, as I broadcast the recorded footage of her hushed liaisons with Alex. Did you actually believe I would be stupid enough to take you back after your betrayal? Sarah's expression crumpled into a mask of horror and disbelief as the stark reality crashed down around her. And Michael, I can explain. Save your pitiful excuses. I roared, feeling the pent-up rage and anguish bubbling over. Our marriage is over. Do you understand? Over. Sarah dissolved into hysterics. I seized the revised prenuptial agreement from my desk and flung it across at her. This is what you'll be left with when the divorce is finalized. Nothing. You wanted to chase after your little boy toy? Well, now you can have him. See how far his money and affections carry you when you're left destitute and alone. Sarah's anguished wails fell on deaf ears as I stormed out of the room, already turning my sights towards the final stage of my intricately woven vengeance. With Lisa's help, I filed for divorce, presenting the court with an overwhelming body of evidence, meticulously compiled during those sham counseling sessions, video recordings, documents, you name it. All of it pointed to the same inescapable conclusion. Sarah's infidelity was unrelenting and unrepentant. The judge, an old-fashioned man with strong moral principles, was appalled by the brazen nature of Sarah's betrayal as the damning footage played out in his courtroom. Mrs. Sinclair, he addressed her sternly over the rims of his bifocals. I must say, your conduct has been utterly reprehensible. To engage in such salacious affairs while feigning attempts to reconcile with your husband, it's unforgivable. Sarah hung her head in disgrace, unable to meet his withering gaze. I, however, met it head-on, a smug smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Your Honor, I interjected smoothly. I don't think Mrs. Sinclair fully understood the depravity of her actions. Perhaps reviewing the revised prenuptial agreement she signed will shed some light on the matter. As the judge pored over the stack of documents I had slid across his bench, his bushy eyebrows climbed ever higher up his furrowed brow. My word, he muttered in disbelief. This prenup strips you of any and all claims to your husband's assets and income in the event of divorce proceedings initiated by him. He turned his disapproving glare onto Sarah. You agreed to these terms? Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Why, yes, Your Honor. I did. Did you have adequate legal representation when reviewing and signing these documents? No, Your Honor, she replied in a small, tremulous voice. I didn't. The judge harumphed and shook his head. Then it appears Mrs. Sinclair made not one mistake, but several. Given the circumstances, I am left with no choice but to grant Mr. Sinclair's petition for divorce. He banged his gavel, the sound reverberating through the hushed courtroom like a thunder clap. Mr. Sinclair will retain sole ownership of all assets, business holdings, and income earned throughout the course of the marriage. Mrs. Sinclair, on the other hand, will be entitled to nothing. I couldn't suppress the surge of dark satisfaction that welled up inside me as I saw the color drain from Sarah's face. No, please, that's not fair. She cried out in desperation. Michael, you can't do this to me. But the judge had made his ruling, and with it, Sarah's life as she knew it had crumbled to ashes around her. In the aftermath of the proceedings, it wasn't just Sarah who faced devastation. Her lover Alex found his own world rapidly unraveling as well. His wife, having put the sordid pieces together, filed for divorce and took him for everything he had, including his home and custody of their children. In the blink of an eye, Alex had gone from a rising executive with a promising future to a washed-up, penniless shell of a man. His reputation in tatters, his job prospects obliterated. He became little more than a cautionary tale about the perils of infidelity. As for Sarah, she slipped into a quiet life of obscurity, forced to downgrade to a dingy studio apartment and take a humiliating job as a barista just to keep a roof over her head. Her former life of luxury and privilege had disintegrated like a fleeting mirage, transformed into a harsh new reality where she was scorned and shunned at every turn. I watched from the sidelines as they grappled with the fall out of their transgressions, reveling in their misery and basking in the twisted satisfaction of knowing I had been the architect of their downfall. At long last, the weight of betrayal and anguish had been lifted from my shoulders. I had emerged victorious, exacting the perfect vengeance upon the two people who had so callously destroyed my life and shattered the sacred vows of our marriage. Where would I go from here? How does one pick up the pieces and rebuild after such cataclysmic destruction? I had no answers, no clear path forward. All I knew was that this chapter, as painful as it had been, was finally closed. A new one now began to unfurl, its pages unblemished and full of untold possibilities. Whether I would find redemption or merely fade deeper into darkness remained to be seen. As I hailed a taxi and gave the driver my address, I couldn't help but wonder if the price I had paid for my revenge had ultimately been too high.